Unbelievable truth revealed. Pastor's shocking actions to protect family honor and save 100 lives. In the heart of Harmony, a small Midwestern town where the sun rose bright over vast cornfields and families gathered every Sunday at Harmony Community Church, Pastor Mike Thompson stood at the precipice of an unimaginable crisis. He was a man known for his warm heart, a father, a friend, and a beacon of hope in troubled times. Yet, whispers filled the air like thick fog, casting doubt over his upright image as the congregation faced the terrifying prospect of losing their homes. A once thriving factory was poisoning their water, and the very soil they tilled was turning against them. The church, where laughter mixed with lingering hymns each Sunday, was now filled with worried faces as families questioned their futures. "What will we do if we lose our homes?" a mother lamented, clutching her child. Pastor Mike swallowed hard. The late afternoon sun streamed through the stained glass, illuminating the tears in his congregation's eyes. Memories of laughter, Sunday picnics, and picnics by the lake pulled at his heart, yet the threat of betrayal loomed larger than ever. As news of factory negligence spread, fear began to choke the town. The mayor, his childhood friend, stood firm, shackled by economic ties. "We can't afford to trust rumors, Mike," the mayor had insisted just days before, leaving Pastor Mike heartbroken. He felt the weight of his community pressing down like a leaden cloud as he prepared for a gathering that would test their faith like never before. Pastor Mike's first gathering was meant to be a night of unity, but as he spoke of love and resilience, voices turned sharp and resentful. The crowd erupted in heated debates, some blaming the factory, the lifeblood of their jobs, while others pointed fingers at those who dared to question. Pastor Mike felt the fissures deepen. His heart ached. He watched neighbors turn on one another like wildfire. "This isn't right," he urged, desperately trying to bridge the growing divide. Then came the unforeseen twist. His daughter, Emma, a bright-eyed college student who wore her heart on her sleeve, found herself entangled with Josh, a factory worker terrified of losing his job. Their relationship sparked hidden tensions, each parent fearing for their child's future, yet hopelessly drawn together in love and support. Emma's laughter and Josh's gentle reassurance filled a void, reminding Pastor Mike of the same laughter he cherished as a boy running through these very fields. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The town felt like it was hanging by a thread, and Pastor Mike knew he had to choose between his convictions and the fragile alliances built over years of friendship and trust. The congregation rallied behind him with prayers, but the air crackled with an uncertainty that suffocated hope. As Pastor Mike prepared to confront the factory's negligence, he couldn't shake the chilling thought. If his community had to choose between their loyalty to him or the factory that fed their families, what would they decide? And so, as the church doors closed behind him, Pastor Mike gleaned the truth deep within himself. Could he fight for justice without losing everything he held dear? The storm was brewing, and he stood in its grasp, knowing the ultimate revelation could shatter the very fabric of Harmony, leaving his heart to tremble under the weight of its consequence. As the sun surrendered to twilight over Harmony, Pastor Mike gathered his resolve. He recalled the faces of the families who turned to him for guidance, their eyes brimming with desperation. Moments earlier, he had been enveloped in uncertainty, but now, standing under the church's flickering lights, he felt a flicker of determination. The church was a sanctuary, a refuge that had stood witness to countless joys and sorrows. It carried the weight of secrets and dreams, and tonight it needed to echo with hope once more. Pastor Mike stepped up to the pulpit, gripping the sides as if to steady himself against a tide of emotion. "It's time to fight," he declared, his voice strong despite the tremor of his heart. A murmur of surprise rippled through the congregation. A chorus of voices, previously divided, hushed, lighting a spark of recognition. He lifted his hands, pacing before the sea of anxious faces. "We've been afraid, yes, but fear cannot define us. We need to stand together to uncover the truth. Still, deep-seated doubts loomed. The mayor, seated at the back, shifted uncomfortably. Pastor Mike caught his eye, and in that moment, an unspoken challenge hung in the air. Could he rally the town behind him, risking the livelihoods of the very people he loved? Meanwhile, Emma stole glances at Josh, who sat in the front row. He nodded subtly, his eyes reassuring. It was a flicker of strength she desperately needed. They were entwined in a complex web, love teetering on the edge of turmoil. As Pastor Mike's speech rolled on, he called on the townsfolk to unite. If we don't act, we let fear win. We'll lose not just our homes, but our spirit. His voice fluctuated between passion and a haunting ache, trying to connect, to break through the jagged barriers that had formed between neighbors. But the wounds ran deep, and soon, cries of dissent broke through. What if we lose everything? And we can't afford to risk our jobs. The thunder of discontent rolled through the pews as few felt the burden of doubt weighing heavily upon them. Listen, Pastor Mike's piercing call cut through the noise. He swallowed hard, his heart racing. I know the factory feeds our bellies, but it's poisoning our land. We can't choose between truth and survival. Frustration clawed at his throat as he longed for their understanding. Couldn't they see beyond the immediate threat? As he stepped down from the pulpit, the tension twisted like a knot in his stomach. Each face reflected the struggle between loyalty and truth, leading Mike to wonder if the battle ahead would fracture rather than unite them. That night, as the congregation began to disperse, Pastor Mike felt a heaviness descend. He knew that confronting the factory meant igniting a spontaneous fire of rebellion. But if that fire also meant risking his daughter's happiness with Josh, he was left in the pits of despair. Walking out to the parking lot, Emma and Josh caught up to him. Dad. Emma's voice was soft but firm. We need to expose the truth, no matter the cost. Her words held the weight of conviction and pain, challenging him to face the reality they all shared. As they stood there, enveloped in the dim light, the decision lay ahead. Pastor Mike faced an unthinkable question. Was he strong enough to risk everything to protect the integrity of Harmony, even if it meant losing a part of his heart? What sacrifices would he have to make in order to save the very soul of his community? And amidst the turmoil, a new storm began to brew just beyond the horizon. The wind whipped through the parking lot, rustling the leaves of nearby trees as Pastor Mike's heart beat fast. Each pulse echoed the gravity of the moment. He looked at Emma and Josh, their faces a mix of determination and fear. You're right, he started, his voice barely above a whisper. But it won't be easy. There are a lot of people who will fight us every step of the way. Emma's eyes shone in the dim light. But what's the alternative? Just sitting around, hoping things will fix themselves? We can't let them get away with it. Josh stepped closer, standing shoulder to shoulder with her. We can organize meetings, gather evidence, reach out to other families. If we can show them the truth, they might change their minds. Pastor Mike nodded slowly, feeling the heaviness in his chest lift slightly. But deep down, he was still unsure. And what if they won T? What if they turn against us? We won T no unless we try, Emma countered, her youthful spirit igniting a flicker of hope in him. The warmth of her belief wrapped around him like a comforting blanket. He thought of all the families depending on him, all those who had sat in the pews, their eyes shining with faith. With a deep breath, Pastor Mike began to form a plan. All right, we can start tomorrow. A community meeting at the church. I'll make the announcement during Sunday service. Great, Emma exclaimed, her enthusiasm infectious. She turned to Josh, who smiled at her, his own resolve strengthening. But listen, Pastor Mike warned, a weight in his voice, we have to be careful. The factory's owners have influence, and we do not want to put anyone else in danger, especially you two. His gaze softened as he looked at his daughter. Emma reached for his hand. Dad, we're in this together. You taught us that standing up for what's right means doing it with courage. He squeezed her hand, taking in the intensity of her words. Perhaps he had underestimated their united front. The connection between them felt electric, igniting the flame within him. As they talked, rain began to fall softly, pattering against the pavement and whispering of change. The storm brewing in the distance had turned into a steady downpour. Somehow, that felt fitting. Chaos could mean renewal. Over the next hour, their small group grew as neighbors appeared, drawn by whispers of a rallying call. Faces lit by the glow of streetlights began to fill the parking lot. There was Mrs. Cartwright, the elderly widow from 2 blocks away, holding her umbrella against the chilly drizzle, and the Thompsons with their 2 kids, curious about what was brewing amongst their community. "Let us gather everyone together," Pastor Mike urged Emma and Josh, his heart swelling with gratitude for the support. "We need a plan, and we need it fast." As they rallied together, forming little pockets of conversation, he felt the energy shift. It wasn't just fear swirling in the air anymore. It was possibility. The mayor, who had lingered at the edge, approached them slowly. Clearing his throat, he spoke up. "Pastor, I think it's time we talked. I have my own concerns about the factory, but—" Pastor Mike felt his heartbeat quicken again. The tension in the air felt electric. The townsfolk were beginning to listen. Yet he knew there were deep-rooted fears to navigate, and possible loss loomed large ahead. "Let us gather everyone to the church this Sunday," he said, feeling the weight of his words. "I hope we can decide together what we will do next." The crowd agreed, an undercurrent of hope threading through their anxious hearts. But as Mike stood there, he couldn't shake the feeling. What if tomorrow revealed not just the truth, but consequences he couldn't foresee? But just as the gathering began to disperse, a distant rumble echoed across the sky, a lightning strike illuminating the horizon. Emma gasped, clutching Josh's arm. "What was that?" Pastor Mike felt a chill run down his spine. A storm was indeed brewing, one that threatened much more than their plans for solidarity. "Maybe it's a sign," Josh said quietly. "Things are about to change. Or maybe it's the calm before chaos," Pastor Mike murmured, looking toward the dark clouds. "But whatever it is, we need to be ready." What was lurking in the shadows, waiting to strike? And what tests awaited them on the path of truth they dared to tread? The morning dawned gray and heavy, the air thick with the promise of more rain. Pastor Mike stood at the church's entrance, hands in his pockets, watching the gathering crowd. Each person trudging up the steps brought a mix of strength and anxiety. Mrs. Cartwright was the first to arrive, her frail frame draped in a knitted shawl, but with a fierce determination lighting her lined face. "Pastor Mike," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor of her hands, "I've been thinking. We can't just speak up. We need to show them what is happening." Her words hung in the air, potent with urgency. Mike nodded, grateful for her spirit. She wasn't the only one. One by one, the families trickled in, bringing with them the weight of their shared struggles. Emma and Josh were among the last to arrive, their expressions serious but hopeful. "We've been talking," Emma said as she approached. "What if we create a video? It could let the wider community see what the factory's really doing, how it's hurting people." "What a great idea," Mike exclaimed, feeling a rush of pride and excitement. "We'll need volunteers to help. We can use the church's resources." Josh chimed in. "And we should go door to door too. It's not just about talking to our friends. We need to reach everyone, especially those who don't know about the dangers." But within the warmth of their plans, a flicker of dread curled in Mike's stomach. "We must tread carefully," he warned, pacing slightly as the others focused on logistics. "The factory owners want tea like this. I've heard whispers about what happens when people stand up to them." Emma stepped in front of him, eyes blazing. "But if we don't do this now, we might lose everything. People deserve to know." He met her steady gaze, torn between fear and admiration. "You're right. They do deserve to know. But we have to be smart about it." The group continued to brainstorm, filling the church with whispers of hope and action. Yet beneath that energy simmered a deeper concern. As the meeting wound down, Mike felt exhausted. The weight of leadership sat heavy on his shoulders, but he carried it for them, every hopeful face a reminder of why they were fighting. They decided to shoot the video that afternoon. As they filmed, he watched Emma and Josh interact with their neighbors, documenting stories of sickness and fear. Their faces were filled with earnest compassion, something that filled his heart and reminded him why he had chosen this life. As they wrapped up, Mike overheard a conversation in the corner. It was Mrs. Cartwright again, her voice low. "What if they retaliate? What about our families?" He frowned, contemplating her fears. This was about so much more than just a factory. It was about the society they had built together, and the choices that would ripple outwards from today. The sky overhead darkened, ominous thunder rumbling in the distance. An unease crept in, reminding him of the storm he felt brewing within the community, one that could either lead to rebirth or ruin. He glanced outside. The wind had picked up again, howling through the empty streets. The clouds hung heavy. So did the uncertainties. They needed to act, yet there was a cost to be weighed. Minutes later, while they were preparing to leave, Josh's phone buzzed. "Look," he said, holding it up for everyone to see. Their essay post online. Someone's warning about protests against the factory. Mike felt his heart race. "We need to be careful. We should regroup and talk this through." But Emma stepped forward, gripping the edge of the table. "No, they're not going to silence us. We have to be louder than their threats." Her fire ignited a spark in the others, and Mike couldn't help but feel that the tide was turning. This was what they had prepared for. As they prepared to head back to the church for one last strategic session, a loud crack of thunder reached through the air, almost echoing the weight of their task. "Are we ready for this?" he asked, knowing that the storm outside mirrored the upheaval that was brewing within their community. But as Mike looked into the eyes of his daughter and her friends, he realized the answer was clear. Even if the sky was dark, they would not be alone in the fight. What awaited them in the days ahead? Would their courage be enough to face whatever storm was coming? The church glowed with the dim light of flickering lamps as the group gathered for their final strategy session. Pastor Mike could feel the tension in the air. It was thick, like the humidity before a storm. They huddled around the table, crammed with laptops and notebooks, and the spirits of hope and anxiety oscillated like a pendulum. "Okay, everyone," Mike said, his voice steady but edged with urgency. "We need to finalize our plan before we go out there. Let us go over what each video segment will cover. Emma, you're leading the interviews. How are we going to get people to open up?" Emma took a moment, chewing her lower lip. "I think we'll start by just listening, you know? If they see we care, they'll trust us enough to share their stories. We have to emphasize that this isn't just about the factory. It's about our families and our lives." Everyone nodded, their faces reflecting a blend of inspiration and fear. Joshua tossed a pen lightly in his fingers. "And we should remind them that they're not alone. We're in this together. If they see that we care, that they're part of a community standing up, it'll make a difference." The sound of thunder roared outside, shaking the windows, and a collective jump of surprise rippled through the group. Pastor Mike allowed a soft smile to break through, understanding how human connections could combat the dire circumstances they faced. "Let us not forget about the door-to-door initiative," he continued, trying to keep the mood constructive. He couldn't ignore the swell of worry churning in his stomach. He recalled Mrs. Cartwright's cautionary words. "We need to establish a base. People need to know they're not fighting alone, especially if there might be retaliation from the factory." Emma's brow furrowed. "We can't let fear dictate our actions. No more hiding behind closed doors. This isn't just for us. It's for everyone who has suffered." "Right," Mike said, his heart racing at her determination. But then doubt began to cloud his thoughts. What if they faced repercussions? What if their brave stance unleashed something darker in the factory owners? A worry creased his forehead. "Let us make sure that everything we do is documented," Mike said finally, urging caution while maintaining momentum. "We can't afford to miss any detail. Lois, can you handle the tech? Ensure the video is ready for sharing." Lois nodded, her hands moving confidently across her laptop keyboard. "I'll make sure it's edited tightly. We'll create social media buzz. Make it impossible for the factory to ignore us." As the storm outside increased in intensity, Mike caught Josh grinning, excitement glimmering in his eyes. They've been playing with fire for too long. Time to turn the tables. During the buzz of optimism, Mike could feel his heart thudding beneath the weight of his responsibilities. What if their collective courage came at a steep price? Yet he also recognized that if they didn't pull together now, they might lose everything they held dear. As the group wrapped up the meeting, a deafening crack of thunder shattered the air, and then the lights flickered. The room fell into darkness, and gasps filled the space. "It's okay," Mike reassured the group, their faces illuminated by the glow of their phones. "We can finish this. We know our purpose." Just then, a burst of wind blasted through the church doors, throwing them open. The sound of rain hammered down like 1,000 drums, a fierce reminder of the storm outside. Emma stood firm, a beacon of light. "Let us stand together. No more holding back. We won't let this storm drown our voices." Mike felt a surge of unity as the group rallied around Emma's words. As they poured onto the streets, side by side, The rain fell like tears of the earth itself, mixing with their resolve. But as they stepped into the night, a chilling thought crossed his mind. Were they ready to face what awaited them? The community's resolve was strong, yet shadows loomed over their bravery, and Mike sensed that the fight had only just begun. What would they discover in the heart of the storm? And would their collective courage be enough to withstand the oncoming backlash? The downpour drummed relentlessly against the pavement as Mike and the group pushed forward, their footsteps splashing through puddles that pooled along the street. The air, charged with rain and anticipation, felt electric. Inside, however, uncertainty twisted like a knife. "Where to first?" Josh called over the sound of the rain, his voice bright, but his eyes betraying a flicker of doubt. Mike scanned the neighborhood, homes flickering with lights, shapes behind curtains peering at the storm. "Let us start with the Johnsons. They've been here almost as long as the factory. If anyone has a story to tell, it's them." He turned to Emma, who nodded, determination etched across her features. Every house was a potential story waiting to be unearthed. As they approached the Johnson home, Emma took a deep breath, steeling herself. She would be the one to ignite the voices that had been muffled for too long. The group followed her lead as if sensing that this moment was pivotal. When they reached the door, Mike rapped lightly. The sound was swallowed by the storm. Instantly, the door creaked open, framed by the warm glow from within. Mrs. Johnson stood there, her face pale and anxious. "Pastor Mike?" "Emma?" Her eyes widened in surprise. "What are you doing out here in this weather?" "Mrs. Johnson, we need to talk," Emma said, her voice steady despite the chaos outside. "It's about the factory and our community." Mrs. Johnson hesitated, her hand clenching the door. "I don't know if now is the time. Can't you see the storm? It's not safe." "It's not about the storm outside," Mike said softly. "It's about the storm brewing in silence. We're here to stand up for all of us." With a resigned sigh, Mrs. Johnson let the door swing wide open. "All right, come in. I'll grab my husband." Inside, the living room was filled with faded photographs and worn furniture, a testament to years of family milestones. The warmth felt reassuring, wrapping around them like a tight embrace. As Mr. Johnson joined them, curiosity danced in his eyes. "Why the urgency?" he asked, glancing at the rain pounding against the windows. Mike took a moment, gathering his thoughts. "The factory has been hurting our community, but we've decided it's time to stop being afraid. We want your story, and we believe it can make a difference." As the Johnsons exchanged anxious glances, the weight of their past hung in the air. Gradually, they began to share tales of the factory's practices, the struggles of neighbors, the worries suffocating their hope. Each word was like a stone cast into the still water of their lives, creating ripples that threatened to burst the dam of emotion behind their walls. Emma recorded every moment on her phone. "This is important," she reminded them. "Your experiences, your truth, I promise it will resonate with others." Suddenly, a loud crash sounded from outside, pulling the group's attention. A large branch fell, splitting a nearby power line with a flash of sparks. Panic flickered across Mrs. Johnson's face. "Is this what we're inviting?" she whispered, fear lacing her voice. "What if we end up making things worse?" "Together, we're stronger," Mike replied, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "Fear has kept us silent for far too long." Just as their conversation deepened, raindrops began to seep through the old window frames, pooling at their feet. Amid their shared fear of the storm brewed a greater storm of reckoning inside them, a call to action. But as they tried to capture this moment of truth, Mike suddenly caught a glimpse of shadows moving in the light outside, a car pulling into view, headlights cutting through the rain like predators closing in on their prey. "Who's that?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The feeling of dread settled in the room like a fog, heavy and oppressive. "Maybe it's nothing," Josh offered weakly, but his voice held no conviction. As the door creaked open again, the group turned, hearts racing. Would their commitment to speak out ignite a fire of retaliation? And as the figure stepped inside, a chilling hush wrapped around them all, more anxious than ever to understand who it was and what this encounter would mean for their fight ahead. The door creaked open wider, revealing a tall figure, soaked to the skin, blocking the threshold. The dim light caught the sharp contours of a familiar face. It was Tom, the factory manager. Mike's heart sank as he saw the tension writhe in the atmosphere. a thickening silence enveloping them. Tom. Mike managed, his voice trailing off. What are you doing here? Tom stepped inside, shaking rain from his hair, his expression unreadable. I need to talk to you, he said, glancing nervously at the Johnsons. About the factory. About everything. Mrs. Johnson tensed, a mix of anger and fear flickering in her eyes. We were just discussing how it's hurting our community. Tom raised his hands in a gesture of peace. I know, and I'm not here to argue, he said quickly. I came to warn you. Things are happening behind the scenes that you don't know about. Like what? Emma asked, her voice steady against the storm. She had seen how Tom operated, and her instinct told her this wasn't just idle chatter. The factory's ownership is changing. He hesitated, gripping the back of his neck. And not in a way that benefits anyone here. I thought it was time you heard it from me. Why would you care? Josh blurted, suspicion knitting his brow. You've always been on their side. Tom took a deep breath, the weight of what he was about to say hanging heavy in the air. Because this time, it's personal. You think I don't care about the people here? This factory has been my life, and all I've tried to do was make it work. But it's not what you think. The new investors, they're ruthless. I've seen what they do to communities. As he spoke, a flicker of humanity shone beneath his hardened exterior, but mistrust rippled through the group. They all knew Tom's history of protecting his own interests at almost any cost. I'm here because I want you to be prepared, he continued, desperation creeping into his voice. Gather your stories, build your community. You're going to need each other when they come after you. They silenced every voice calling for change. The Johnsons and the rest exchanged looks of disbelief. Had Tom finally crossed into a territory of sincerity? Or was this some new ploy? Mike stepped forward, tension clenching in his chest. What do you want from us? Nothing, Tom replied, his eyes earnest. Just to see you succeed where I failed. I've seen the damage, and I can't stand by and watch it continue. If our community unites, it could be enough to stand against them. Emma still held her phone, filming the moment, capturing something raw and unexpected unfolding in front of them. This could be what we need, she thought, in spite of her reservations. But just then, a sharp knock shattered their gathering. The sound echoed like a slap across the charged room, drawing everyone's attention painfully back to the storm outside. That wasn't me, Tom said, fear flickering in his eyes again. Who is it now? Josh whispered, his earlier bravado replaced by a creeping dread. The group huddled closer as another knock rang out, more insistent this time. It was a signal, an omen of the urgency of their situation. Something told them it wasn't just curiosity drawing whoever it was. Their hearts raced, the rain seemed to stutter, a sudden pulse of tension in the air. Mike swallowed hard, looking between Tom and the door. Whoever this was could change everything. We can't back down now, he said, his voice firm. We have to find out who else is fighting for this community. No one else will. And as Tom's eyes widened in concern and resolve deepened in their hearts, they braced themselves for whatever awaited them on the other side of the door. But would their courage hold in the face of the truths that lay beyond, ready to challenge everything they thought they knew? The air thickened with unspoken questions as Mike moved toward the door, each step heavy with uncertainty. The persistent knocking felt like an invasion, an unwelcome reminder that the storm raging outside mirrored the tempest brewing in their lives. He exchanged glances with Emma and the Johnsons, gauging their resolve. Stay close, Mike murmured, gripping the door handle firmly. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for whatever he might find outside. With one swift motion, he swung the door open. A gust of wind slapped against his face, rain cascading down in sheets. Standing there, shivering and drenched, was a young woman, her eyes wide with urgency. She looked familiar, a face from the community, but he couldn't place her name. Please, you have to help me, she gasped, her voice barely rising above the howling wind. They're coming for us all. What do you mean? Tom stepped forward, pushing through the others to get a better look. The urgency in the girl's voice sent a chill down his spine. The factory. They've sent people to intimidate anyone who speaks out, she continued, her breath coming in quick, panicked gasps. I overheard them planning something. If you don't act now, who are they? Emma demanded, stepping closely to Mike's side. What do they want? The investors, the girl said, wiping her wet hair from her eyes, exposing the resolve hardened in her features. They've already shut down half the factory last week. If you're not careful, they'll destroy everything we've built. Words tumbled quickly from her lips, desperate and raw. The depth of her fear pierced the air with stark clarity. Her presence felt like a beacon amid the chaos, igniting a spark of determination in Mike. "Look, we've been planning to gather stories, to fight back together," he said, pushing aside his own fears. "You're not alone anymore." Behind him, Tom stood silent, absorbing her words, his expression shifting from skepticism to a dawning realization. "You shouldn't be out here alone," he said, softer now. "They are dangerous. We need a plan." "I can help," the girl interjected, stepping forward. "I know people, families who have been threatened. We need to rally them, share our experiences. We can't let them silence us." As the rain continued to hammer down around them, Mike looked at Tom, then back at the Johnsons. The weight of their situation pressed down on him like a heavy storm cloud. "This is it, then. If we can unite the community, if we can bring stories to light, then maybe we can protect what matters," Tom interrupted, eyes glistening with newfound conviction. "But first, we need to get somewhere safe. They could be watching us right now." "Come inside," Emma urged, gesturing toward the small, flickering light of their home. "We can plan together." As they stepped back into the warmth, a sense of unity began to form, but the shadows lurking beyond the door loomed larger, a reminder of the battle that lay ahead. They could feel the storm's fury bursting outside, but this felt different. They were no longer just individuals. They were a team, ready to fight back against the dark forces threatening their families. The flickering light along the walls illuminated their faces, an unbreakable circle of humans bound by a shared mission. But as the wind howled louder, a thought crept into Mike's mind, terrifying and insistent. What sacrifices would they need to make for this fight? The uncertainty of their path lay just beyond the door, and the looming question hung heavily in the air. What price would they all pay for their freedom? The room felt small, the walls closing in as they gathered around the table, candles flickering against the sudden darkness outside, where gusts of wind howled like angry spirits. Mike placed his hands on the cool surface, pushing back the doubts swirling in his mind. Around him, the faces of his friends reflected a mix of determination and fear that left him momentarily paralyzed. "First, we need to hear everything you know." Mike's tone was steady, firm. He wanted to project strength. The girl, her hands still trembling, nodded quickly. "I overheard them talking in the break room," she began, her voice steadier now. "They plan to bring in more security, people who won't hesitate to intimidate workers. They aim to scare us into silence so they can continue squeezing profits while destroying lives." Tom leaned forward, a frown creasing his brow. "What specifically are they doing? We need details. They're telling us that if we speak out, we'll lose our jobs. They've already fired several people who tried to raise concerns," she explained, desperation creeping back into her voice. "I was scared. I thought if I spoke, they'd find me next." Emma placed a hand on the girl's shoulder. "You're safe here. We won't let them hurt you. But we need to act," the girl insisted. "If we're going to fight back, we have to unite everyone at the factory, make them understand they can't be afraid." The weight of her words settled like heavy stones in the air. Mike felt the gravity of their situation churning in his chest. "That's it then," he said, shaking off a rising sense of panic. "We rally everyone. We have to organize a meeting, gather as many people as we can who've experienced intimidation." Emma's eyes sparkled with fresh resolve. "We could schedule it for next week. Give people time to spread the word." Tom nodded slowly, his thoughts clearly racing. "But we can't do this in the open. The investors will be watching. We need a safe place to gather, somewhere they can't find us." As discussions flowed, Mike's mind spiraled with possibilities. How many others had suffered in silence? Families torn apart, all for the sake of greed. He caught Emma's eye across the table and held it, their shared conviction igniting a flame of hope. "Let us start a pamphlet campaign," he suggested. "If we can create flyers outlining what's happening, people will feel more empowered to come forward. It'll break the silence." The girl nodded vigorously. "Yes, people need to know they aren't alone. The more of us who stand together, the stronger we'll be." But even as the plans began to solidify, an ice-cold fear gripped Mike's heart. What if their efforts backfired? What if the investors retaliated harder against those who joined their cause? The anxiety prickled at the edges of his thoughts, nearly choking his confidence. Are we prepared for the consequences? He finally asked, his voice low. Because I can't shake the feeling, this could put everyone we care about at risk. Silence fell, thick as a heavy fog, until the girl spoke again, her voice resolute. We have to try? If we don't stand up now, we'll lose everything. I can contact some of the families I know. We can meet and support each other. But we need to do it soon. As they exchanged plans, Mike could feel a sense of urgency settle in. They were stepping onto a battlefield, and every move mattered. Yet another question loomed ominously. Could they truly inspire a change, or was this a fight destined to consume them? As night deepened outside, he felt the weight of their resolve, but also the fragile thread binding them to safety. The tension crackled, a powerful reminder of the stakes involved. What if this was just the beginning of a storm more destructive than any they had faced? The dark sky mirrored their uncertainties, leaving one final thought echoing within him. Were they prepared for the harsh reality of a fight none of them could truly comprehend? The storm raged outside, but inside, a fire burned bright. Mike gathered the group with a determined look as they moved closer, eyes locked on him. We're doing this together, he said, voice steady as he fought the tremor of fear lurking beneath the surface. Tonight, he continued, we'll create a plan for our meeting. We need to show the community that we're united. We can't let intimidation win. The group hummed with nervous energy, but there was also a thread of hope weaving through. Emma leaned forward, her expression fierce. If we can get families together, maybe we can push back against the factory's threats. We need to give them a reason to unite. Mike nodded, feeling pride swell within him. He had watched his daughter grow into a leader, someone willing to fight for truth, just like he had taught her. As they brainstormed, Josh chimed in, enthusiasm bubbling beneath his anxious exterior. What about social media? If we put the word out quickly, we can draw in more people. Maybe others outside our town can support us. Great idea, Emma exclaimed, her eyes shining. We can start a hashtag something catchy to spread awareness. Let us document everything, Tom added, chiming in with an unexpected spark of sincerity. Our stories, our struggles, if we can show the truth, people will listen. The atmosphere in the room shifted, charged with possibility. They were no longer just a small group. They were a movement, a collective heartbeat echoing with determination. Each voice that rose filled Mike with an ever-growing sense of resolve that warmed him against the tempest raging outside. All right, let us divvy up tasks, Mike ordered, excitement tinged with urgency. Emma, you and I will handle the sign-ups. Josh, you take care of the social media campaign. Tom, help our new friend reach out to those families. We need their voices. As the plan solidified, the laughter began to seep through the cracks of tension. It felt good to find light amid darkness, to carve out a path forward. Suddenly, the power flickered again before plunging them into darkness. The room bathed in the faint glow of smartphones quickly turned into an island of illumination, laughter sparking like fireworks. Let us stay focused, Mike said, his voice cutting through the mirth. The storm may be outside, but we have our mission. We will not let it deter us. Before the night ended, they retreated into a circle, hearts beating in rhythm as they held hands, some teary-eyed, others steadfast. Together, we can face anything, Mike spoke, his voice steady like granite. This is our moment to stand. We've weathered storms before, and together, we will fight to protect what matters most. As if on cue, the rain began to fade, the wild winds replaced by a gentle patter. Outside their shelter of solidarity, the dark clouds still loomed ominously, but inside, a vibrant flame ignited within each member of the group. The meeting the following week prompted a wave of engagement from the community like they hoped for. Families gathered in the dimly lit church, eyes wide with hope, voices filled with determination. There was fear in the air, yes, but it was coupled with an undeniable courage that surged through the hearts of those assembled. Raise your hands if you or someone you love has been affected by the factory, Mike called, vision anchored on the swells of hands rising in defiance. He felt a surge of strength in the collective solidarity wrapped around him, binding them into one force, unwavering and strong. Among the crowd, Mrs. Cartwright held her granddaughter's hand, her face resolute with the spirit of generations before her. We will not be silenced, she proclaimed, her voice a battle cry that echoed through the church like a beacon of light. Cheers erupted through the crowd, echoing hopes and dreams that stood against years of fear and intimidation. For the first time, they felt the weight of hope growing heavier than their fears. "I think we're ready," Mike whispered to Emma as they exchanged proud smiles, the warmth of shared conviction illuminating the shadows they had once felt consumed by. They had rallied, they had fought, and they were not about to hold back now. With renewed clarity, they turned toward the storm, together as a community, ready to face whatever lay ahead. This battle was only the beginning, and as they unlocked the doors to their future, a shared breath filled the air. They were prepared to rise, no matter the obstacles they may face, bound by truth and the unbreakable tethers of hope. And now, my friends, the time has come for you to join the fight. You need to subscribe right now to this channel to not miss out on more powerful stories like this one. Hit that like button to feed the algorithm and make your voice heard. Comment your feelings about the ending. Let us know how this transformation has touched you. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this incredible journey. This is the moment to show your support. Your actions create ripples of change. Let us stand together,